Good evening, good evening, good evening.
Good evening.
Sonya, I remember we'll wait till at least we get one person. Let me go
Welcome to our second
Right.
series of 2022. And
Hey, Rhea, go on and let the team know we about to get started because nobody ain't on right now. I think everybody think we done.
Okay.
so welcome for those who are going to be with us to recap
Right.
the panel that I just sat on with some Black mothers who have children. And it's so funny. I had to look up, John, like how far away they were. And I was like, wow, like they're 600 miles away, but their stories echo the stories of the mothers and fathers that we talk to every day. And it was heartbreaking, to listen to that.
A lot of similarities. But yeah, it was a couple of key things that stood out, and that's once we get going for tonight and we get people coming in, like that's something that I want to talk about and just show what real energy and why we're doing great things at Propel, but we're different with the experiences that we have, and it was real evident. It was real evident. So
Yeah. So shout out to the ERN. That is the Ed Reform Now.
yep, education reform
Yep.
now.
And they hosted the Right to Read, closing literacy gaps for students. And most of the parents on there were from DC. And
Mm-hmm.
shout out to my sister Lane, who's in DC. But their stories were just like the stories here in Nashville. And I think what was significant about today was Black mothers on the last day of Black history,
Mm-hmm.
making it known to the world that we want our children to be a part of Black history. We want them to reach their greatest potential. And they have genius and great things ahead of them. And we want to remove all barriers that may be in their way. So shout out to Carla and Jessica and Phaedra, and many of the others, Nia, who were on that panel, who spoke truth to power and just spoke the plain old truth.
Right. It was plain old truth, but I'll tell you one thing, and we want to go ahead and start the video. Saying I know people are starting to come in now,
Mhm.
but it was really at one point. I mean, how can I say this? You brought you spoke well as a Nashville Propel powerful parent leader, and it was really evident. And one of the things I want to do just to kick people off, I know it was a lot of our people on there. Again, like in a positive sense, I realized that we have a following, and it was really strong to see our following like come into DC and be able to show them like this is what it's about. Just because we're in the South doesn't mean like we're taking a back seat. Like this is not the 70s or the 60s or the 50s.
Yes, 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 yes.
All right, so let me play a little bit of this song, then I'm gonna play about 5 minutes, and then I'm gonna get your perspective.
Okay.
All right, let's see. Yeah. All right. Okay. Let's see. Boom.
How is Nashville, Tennessee spending these funds to address literacy?
Being able, yes,
As an educators, to be able to provide that great literacy training for our students, and I thank you for that as well. States are receiving historic amounts of funding to address COVID-related learning loss in schools. Sonya, how is Nashville, Tennessee spending these funds to address literacy gaps? And what would you like to see happen in Nashville from a policy perspective to not only move literacy to pre-pandemic levels, but to levels that are better than current education standards?
Thank you for asking. And as I sit and I listen to you guys who are 600 miles away from me, I hear more of the same than the status quo. It's amazing how our stories sound just alike. And here we are, the tail end of Black History Month, where we celebrate the success of our people in 2022, still talking about children being able to read. If nothing else, we should be teaching children how to read. They have the right to be taught how to read. And it grieves my spirit. See, one story is it's bad. Two is a trend. Thousands, it's a crisis. And we have a crisis on hand. And so you asked me about funding here in Nashville. We are getting historic amounts of money. They are making it rain for those of you out there listening. I don't know if you listen to rap, but they are making it rain. And what they're doing is using stopgap programs. I often wonder what the next excuse is going to be as to why children are not being taught how to read. And what I see is people making excuses, kicking the can down the road, and bullying all of us. That's what I see. 99% of all people can be taught how to read. We're talking about that 1% who has severe disabilities, but 99%. Do we hear that? 99% of all people can be taught how to read. It is difficult. It's not something that is natural for the brain, but 99% of all people can be taught how to read. So we've got to develop a moral compass here, guys. We've got to develop a moral compass. This is a human rights, a civil rights. This is a life and death conversation we're having. These are children's lives. These are adults that we have put into the workforce. And I often say that this country goes to war. They don't leave their dead behind on the battlefield. But we have left countless amount of people behind here in this country. We have put adults on streets in DC and in Nashville it's not their fault. So what we got to do, we got to hold people accountable. And in Nashville Propel is here to do just that. Parents are the only ones who will hold the systems accountable. The systems will protect themselves. The system protectors is what I call. That's what they were set up to do. And as Jessica went through the history, that old system is being protected by Black folk and white folk. Yeah, I'm gonna call it out. I'm here to tell the truth and shame the oppressor. And so what we got to do is hold people accountable. Just today, I talked to someone from our central office about literacy, and I explained to him that Tennessee has developed Reading 360 and some different laws around literacy. We've got a third grade retention law here that is set to go forward. And right now, we are unable to tell the difference between a struggling reader and a reader who is receiving poor instruction. And what I found is my son was receiving poor instruction, like many people, like myself. He does not have dyslexia. But I fight for those who have dyslexia because they have a right to be taught how to read. And so we're building a movement of parents here in Nashville who will hold the system and its protectors accountable. So number one, that's what we got to do. We've got to understand that everybody on this call, when we leave here, we got to go and make sure that every parent knows their power. That's the work that we are all assigned to do and what we have to do. I am not dependent on the system. I have no faith in a system who has failed us for many decades. I am so sorry. Say what you want, but I am a struggling reader. And I heard the young lady who was on here that was on here, might have been Sheila, who said her grandmother, her daughter, her grandchild. That's generations of Black folk who have been left on the battlefield only to fend for themselves. And so parents, I want to inspire you to take matters in your own hands. That's number 2. Fight for your children and other children. Fight, learn, get an understanding of how the system operates around you, of the history that we were talking about on here. And let's develop ways to take care of our children ourselves. And I know that sounds harsh, but when I look at Nashville, who has a zip code with the highest incarceration rate in the nation, who feeds the school to prison pipeline boastfully, I say to every parent on the side of my voice, take matters into your own hands. We've all been betrayed on this call by the system. And mind you, like, we want great educators, right? I love me some great educators, y'all. I have friends who are educators, but when we're talking about a system that won't even give scalpel lessons to its surgeons, meaning the colleges and the universities that they attend, our teachers, they're not even equipped. They're not even equipping the teachers to do what they need to do. I also spoke to some educators today who are not getting the professional development that they need. I just believe that people go to bed at night and wake up wanting to be good people and do what's right by children. But I also believe by 12 noon, when we know that there's a science to reading. We know what works. See, this is not all the way brand new.
Yeah.
By 12 noon, we should all be ready to fight. At nighttime, we all should be losing sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm angry. And I think that all parents, number 3, need to get angry. Be angry like Sonya. Be angry like Phaedra and Nia. Be angry like Carla. Be angry like Josh. Josh, when I first met you, I could tell you was angry. It ain't nothing wrong with being angry.
Right.
Ain't nothing wrong with it. So that's what I want to leave with parents as a solution, because we have states that have laws and money and programs. They're still not testing our children for dyslexia.
Yep.
They're still not using the money. They buying Louis Vuitton bags and red bottom shoes and sports cars. Thank you.
And thank you for this.
So much, Sonya.
So man, so what I will say, and welcome back, Sonya. Just wanted to give you a little breather after that one. Just as you were speaking your truth, and most of the panel, they were from one region, and of course you were from the Nashville Southern region. Like, as you were listening to parents, what was going on in your mind that made you just speak that truth to power?
Anger was going through my mind. I know that's a feeling, right? I was angry. I cannot process in my mind the intentional oppression that our children experience. Like, I literally I'm struggling with that in my brain, because I was always taught to take care of people, love people. I was always taught that I can be anything. I was always taught not to take no for an answer. And I know that there's some people that don't even know what they deserve, right? If I was taught all those good things about my mom and and my family? What about somebody that maybe didn't experience that in their family because they had a harder time than I did? And it makes me angry that a lot of people don't even know what they deserve. They don't understand that they deserve better and they can have better. And they don't understand that the things that they need, it's almost like having cancer and not being told what kind of cancer you have. Like we got many parents that notice something is
There's
going
something
on with
wrong.
their children, and then the children are not even being evaluated and diagnosed with something that has interventions. There are interventions for dyslexia. So it's withholding the cure. There's a science in reading. We know that. And so we know that if we are making sure that children have phonics, phonemic awareness, vocabulary, fluency,
Yep.
all of these things and comprehension, like if we know if we can make sure that we're not missing any of those areas, that 99% of all children can be taught how to read. And when you live in a place like Nashville where 80% of the children can't read, it pisses me off. And I often ask God, how much longer? That's what I was thinking. We know what to do. We know how to make sure that Sheree and Renita and Kenya and Scott and Miss Marpin and Miss King, Miss Kennard, Miss Gordon, Miss Leach, Miss Graham. Like we know how to make sure that your kids know how to read, not just at grade level, baby. Above grade level. I spent the time today with Hume Fogg students. They are getting some of the best education in not only in Nashville, but in the state, and perhaps can be compared across this country. School doesn't look the same for them as it does the school that I attended, the schools that are on my corners right now. It don't even look the same. The same stuff ain't happening in there, John.
Yeah, Hume Fogg is not just the top two schools in Nashville between that and MLK. Like they are ranked across the nation, and I want to say top 20. And so you walking through those doors is not just good. It's not just good Nashville education. Like this is how education should look across the country when you look at and view good schools. And I would say, sadly, we definitely don't get that. But Sonya, I also want to address the reason they created Hume Fogg, the reason they created MLK was to cherry pick based on race and academic level, right? Yeah. And so right now it's not cherry picking for race, but they only want the best and the brightest. If you are not the best and the brightest, you don't have a seat there, because they wanted to create a school that parents could send their kids to get them to come back into the traditional school system. And so it is an intentional cherry pick school that they make no apologies about.
On Broadway.
On Front Street. Yeah.
We're talking about the heart of Nashville. You have the very best school.
Yeah.
Sitting right in the heart. And as I rode in my lift and I pulled up there, I probably hadn't been in that building in about 25 years. Some of my friends went to those schools, right? And I thought about that as I rode through downtown Nashville to that school, and as I passed by the schools in my neighborhood. And I thought about what I was going to say to those students. I love all children. I never want children to feel bad because of what they're getting. So I wanted to be really sensitive to not make them feel bad about what they're getting, but I also wanted them to understand that what they're getting is world class,
World class. Yeah.
and that it's not happening all over, and we have to question why. But I didn't have to do too much convincing. They knew these are children that came to a lunch and learn about and to learn about social movements, and so they understand having a passion and a cause. And I just don't believe that like God like does stuff like, like I believe everything that God does is intentional, like, and it's ordered. And about 6 students after I got finished speaking came up to me and they were focusing on a report around dyslexia. And so look at tonight. I was on a panel speaking about dyslexia. And I believe that God had me there today doing that lunch and learn to connect with some people and also to connect with some children, to speak to them. It's very hard. And I believe we're going to see an uprise of children fighting for children. And I'm believing God for that.
I'm sorry, I was on mute. I think of what you see in Hume Fog, it gives you the dream, it gives you the vision, it gives you the belief that all kids deserve that type of education. I had a really good friend who went to Hume Fog, and when she talked about her experience, I was like, yeah, it wasn't nowhere close near Stratford. And I think Stratford, like I wear my Stratford badge proudly. Like I'm pretty sure you wear your Cobra badge proudly. But listening to her, I realized, it's a difference. And yesterday, a memory popped up. Right, this had to be a memory from 2013, and what it was, Sonya, it was the percentage of kids who make at least a 21 on the ACT out of all of our high schools, 13 to 15 high schools. So I'll tell you where Hume Fogg and MLK was. It was ranked in the, 90, 92% of their kids are scoring at least a 21 or above. Do you know where it was for Stratford, Pearl Cone, and Whites Creek?
No, what was it?
It was between 7 and 3%. 7 and 3%. So you walk into a building that's 90% and above. We come from a building that's 3 to 7%. And nobody gets angry, right? Nobody says that's criminal, that's injustice. I see Miss Candace on here. Miss Candace comes on all the time and talks about her son, how he's not taught as well as he needs to be. They lose him so much she had to put a tracking device in his jacket. We hear from Miss Denise King, who was in our fellowship, who sends her kid, to her grandkid, to a kid in East Nashville. And none of them, and you and me, I know definitely me, don't receive that type of education. And we say, why? If there's no cherry picking in our school system, like why would you have a school that's performing that high and other schools within the school system that are performing so low?
We know it's cherry picking. We know that it was caused by privilege. Like, let's just tell the truth. It was caused by a group of parents, white parents in particular. It was caused because they wanted to keep those parents here in Nashville, out of private schools. And so public education actually privatized their own education and caused the cherry pick. And a lot of parents from our neighborhood they're shamed for trying to find what's best for their children. One of the points that I made to those students at Hume Fog today, that the determining factor for them being at Hume Fog on this very day happened back in 3rd grade.
Wow. Yeah.
Some of them were in the 11th grade. And I said, but the determining factor happened when you were in 3rd grade. And so when we think about, I gave them an example. I said the first 10 students on this row, just imagine that being a school and only 2 of y'all can read. that's got to be a sad indictment on the system. One of the conversations that I had today that I think that I must share with our audience today was actual with Ashford Hughes, who is the chief equity officer. He was there on the panel, and I guess what concerned me about the conversation, I was explaining to him that what I'm finding is even the programs, the stopgap programs that they are championing at the central office are not even getting to the classroom. Your personalized student dashboard, your literacy reimagined, those things are not even going into the school building and let alone in the classrooms directly to the children. And, you know, when you see something wrong, you say something. And one of the things that I made clear to him that I thought that it was a failure in leadership. And that as a visionary myself, my expectation is that leadership and visionaries cast visions, but make sure people catch them. And what he explained to me is, I heard him say system 17 times today to them. What he explained to me is that Dr. Battle is not responsible for everything. And I beg to differ. She's responsible for everything that is on her clock. And the responsibility is to make sure that the things that we're spending record amounts of money on, literacy reimagined, student dashboard, whatever, the responsibility from the board, from Dr. Battle, is full ownership of theirs, to make sure that each school is implementing these programs. If not, then why do we have them? And he went on to tell me that it was a responsibility of the principal. And so what I heard was deflection, excuses, kicking the can down the road, and dodging responsibility and accountability.
Yeah. And Sonya, not to butt in and make these like references to sports, but for me, like, you know, the Titans, right? We talked about, you know, we blew it against the Bengals, and they talked about get rid of Tannehill. They wasn't saying get rid of a fan. They wasn't saying get rid of the wide receiver. They were saying the quarterback at the time, because he is the leader on the field. And so when a play doesn't happen or a bad play happens, they go to the leadership. And I think that's the gift and the curse about being in leadership, is that you are steering the boat in the right or the wrong direction, and we're accountable for it, right? Like,
look, ain't no damn way I'm gonna be the executive director of Nashville Propel. Let's just make this real. And we are not organizing and developing powerful parent leaders. And I'm gonna say it's John's fault. Well, John didn't call somebody. So it's his fault. Or Thomas didn't call somebody. If Thomas don't call somebody, I hold Thomas accountable. And we didn't get the job done.
Right.
And what I heard was these low literacy rates are going to be pushed on these principals.
But let me tell you what they're also trying to do. You know, it's been a long day, you know, coming from the weekend, going into the weekday. Today was big. I mean, you on national panels. We're doing a speaker series. We had parent meetings. We had one-on-ones. But somebody just popped on here. You know, Ms. Maupin said still passing the buck, and I'm going to come back to that. But Josh and Sharon Leach are on here. And what I do know, and Torvis, one of our organizers, can attest to, Josh's kid was at a local pseudo-magnet school. I don't know if it's still a magnet school now, but it used to be when I was in school. And we were talking to him about, you know, what's working well and what do you want to see better. And I remember him pouring his heart out, but essentially saying, look, my child needs tutoring, but they were only doing tutoring in the early morning. And he was like, I don't get it. we already got to be to school early. It's no way as a working father with other kids, he can get his kid to school 6 some early 7 in the morning to do tutoring. And he's still struggling with this issue of making sure his kid gets the proper education. And this is a parent who was reaching out, and I told him, hey, email your principal, set up a meeting, doing all of that, and his kid is still not getting what they need. But it's a million people in the stands saying that they would look at Josh as a bad father it's like, no, like leadership matters. And we see some good leaders, right? We see good leaders who take responsibility inside and outside the classroom, and that's all he was looking for.
Yes. I mean, I totally agree. I was very shocked that he said that to me. Like it was scary, and I just kind of looked, and the teachers that I was with, they was white, and they looked at me, and I looked at them, and we couldn't believe he said that. And it was not surprising, but
Yeah.
surprising, right? Like you really just said that out your mouth, type thing, like. And just to hear those educators who want to get it right, like not be heard.
Yep.
Like
So,
that is not heard.
And this is not doomsday, right? But this is the reality we dealing with in Nashville, right? You dealing with Nashville. I saw some, maybe it was last year, so it's been at least a year, that it says to make it in Nashville, guess how much it costs to make it in Nashville, the it city? Like
You got to have a baseline income of $80,000 a year.
To be the it city, it ain't free, right? We don't get to just say we're the it city for nothing. It costs how much, Sonya?
$80,000.
So, I be on this go. I love talking to parents. I see Charlene on here. I see Miss Compton. I see Kendall. I see Sparkle. I see Candace still popping in. And I remember talking to a lunch lady. And I was just like, you work for the system, right? This was a school in North Nashville. I was like, how is it going? And she broke down everything that we know, right? Like, why they parent shaming, parents are hanging off a cliff trying to pull themselves up because the rent too damn high, the education is too terrible, and everything in between, over-policed, undercompensated is going on. And so when we see our parents coming on here, like we know they got kids to feed. That's why I want to thank you guys for coming on here. You got kids to feed. You got to make sure they're doing homework. Like y'all are in the struggle right now. You are still taking time on a Monday evening to chime in because like that stuff matters.
It matters. And thank you guys for joining us as we do this recap. And if you just joined us, I was able to sit on a panel this evening with some powerful parents from DC.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a panel around dyslexia and literacy, educational reform now, DC, and Dyslexia DC. We're hosting a panel discussion called The Right to Read, Closing Literacy Gaps for Students. And I was invited on that panel, and I'm so honored to be on there with all those Black moms. But we want to just kind of debrief that conversation tonight and talk about literacy and how we as parents here have to continue to build a movement to ensure that all children are reading on grade level and above. And we have to make sure that we're moving in that direction. And the concern and what's keeping us awake at night is we don't see that happening.
Mm-hmm.
We hear a lot of people talk about growth. Do not be deceived by the word growth.
Mm-hmm.
Because growth can be stunted. Growth can be slow. And growth is not necessarily ambitious enough to make sure that your children are reading on grade level and above.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks for doing this.
Yeah, it's Read Me Week this week, right? And in my opinion, that's like saying if you do read me week, if you sit down and read to the kids, you take the book out, you get in front of them, you hold it up like this, like that's going to help the reading issues. No, like that's not, because you have to be taught, right? You have to have reinforcements. In the read me week, really, it's just a little fun and excitement, but it ain't you ain't there, I ain't there. Nobody is there to do read me week to teach children. It's really an opportunity to make reading fun.
So can I explain reading to parents? So
Mhm.
listen up real close, y'all. Listen up real close. I'm gonna put this as basic as I can, and I like to relate things to life, like real life. So first of all, 99% of all people. So you may be looking around your house, right? And your child may have dyslexia or other learning disabilities. 99% of all children can be taught how to read. That 1%, those are children who may have some severe, very severe learning disabilities. 99%. Did y'all hear me? 100%. That's everybody in the district. And I am saying, and I will fight somebody over this, 99% of all the children in MNPS and in the state of Tennessee and in this country can be taught how to read. I bet you guys didn't know that. Parents, you can't teach your children how to read. Let me tell you why. Their teachers have not been taught how to teach children how to read. The state of Tennessee has admitted it. I'm not making this stuff up. I didn't just pull this out of my hat. The educator who is sitting in the room with your child every day, who has been there with them from kindergarten up until now, is like a surgeon who is sent into surgery and not taught how to do surgery. If you ask anybody with a moral compass, they'll tell you that I'm not lying to you. And I'm telling you the truth. If you ask Dr. Battle, I think she got a moral compass. She'll tell you I'm not lying to you. You ask Penny Swin, she'll tell you I ain't lying to you. 99%. So that means you could not teach them how to read. Their teacher could not teach them how to read. And so you reading to them for 30 minutes is good when they have the instruction that they need to put with that. So let's think about a recipe. We're going to make a pound cake. That's 6 eggs, 4 sticks of butter, a teaspoon of vanilla, cake flour, baking powder. I'm just making this up. But we're going to make a whole cake. If you leave out the butter, the cake is not going to do what it's supposed to do. If you leave out the flour, the cake is not going to do what it's supposed to do. If you leave out the baking soda and all that stuff, that cake is not going to rise. You're going to have a flat bundt pan of mush. If you're baking some brownies and you leave out the cocoa, then you don't have brownies, right? Because that's what makes the brownies, the chocolate part and the sugar, right? If you leave any of those components out, you can say all day I baked the cake or I made some brownies, but they ain't gonna taste like nothing. Ain't nobody gonna eat them. And if you bring it to me, I'm gonna talk about you. I'm like, you really? You can say it all day. Same thing with reading. There's a recipe, there's a science. And what that means is there's research to back it. All of those things, fluency and phonemic awareness and phonics, comprehension, like all of these things have to be put together in one ball. Vocabulary, that have to be put in a bowl to make sure that you have a reader. Now, some of you are saying, well, my sister can read and I can read. 5% of all people, all human beings,
We're humanizing.
Learn how to
We are
read.
telling the story. There's a
Read
danger in a
minimal
single story. We're
instruction
making sure that the
balance.
stories of parents and
Literacy.
children
John, you
are
got
heard.
that going on.
Thank you.
Put that on mute, John. Meaning they just need just regular, uninformed, balanced literacy, memorization. 5%, only 5% can do that because the brain is not set up to read. Nope, I don't care what you say. Your brain, I don't care how smart you are. It has nothing to do with your intellect and how smart you are. Whether you go to Harvard, Vanderbilt, has nothing to do with that. The brain is just not set up to read the English language. Doesn't make sense to the brain. 35% of people with moderate implicit instruction in the fundamentals of reading, literacy, science of reading, can learn how to read. 60% of all people need the implicit instruction around the science of reading. That's the recipe. That's the cure. That's what it takes to teach children how to read. And we know that, and we're not doing it.
And Sonya, let me play this last clip as we start to transition. But really, these are not just words you saying you agree with. Like, I want to take it to one part of the clip where after you spoke, let's listen to the response from the other panelists.
Responsibility in helping improve student literacy. Carla and Sheila, you both are up for next.
Yes, Sonya. Yes, Sonya. Yes, that's what I'm talking. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm trying to control myself, but you know what?
Don't.
I'm a mission for God. I have said that, and I will say it again. DC, we got a long past through the grace of God with parents. I'm a parent. She's a parent. The other lady that's a parent. The other one was the educator with the dyslexia that brought us all together. And you know what people would say? Chill up. You're not going to get a hearing. I got a hearing. Chill up. That bill's not going to pass. The bill passed. Chill up. Your bill's not going to, they're not going to fund it. It was fully funded. Fully funded. So I want to tell the other parents out there, even when somebody turn you around at that school, go to those school board meetings, go to the city council, whatever your government level is, and tell your story. Somebody's going to hear it and somebody's going to come walk with you so that you can get what you need to get for your child. So just because they say no, no. And let's make it perfectly clear. All you have to say at a school is that you want your child evaluated. You don't have to do the SST or nothing else.
And we'll stop it right there. And one thing I'm going to just say, that lady wasn't playing around with the mask mandate. Even on Zoom, she had her mask on. But just how was it?
Yeah, she's in a public place.
So how was it just listening to other parents who, they've been in the game and they have, I think, listening to her, it was some policy around dyslexia and everybody had told her no. And so how does that give you hope towards some of the movement that we're building here in Nashville?
The only hope I have is in the parents in our movement. I don't have any faith in anybody else. I'm not saying it to bullshit nobody. I don't have faith in the system. Why should I? Why should I? I'm one of those parents that have been betrayed. I'm one of those parents that trusted the system. And I won't do it again. But I believe with all my heart and all my soul in the parents that we work with. That's what I believe in. I believe that we're the only ones who can hold people accountable. And I tell you, it's so funny. People have gotten mad at me. I have never changed my story. I haven't changed yet or wavered. And there are people that get mad at me because I won't change what I say and what I believe. And I don't care if you're my friend. It's not about me liking anybody or disliking anybody. What I don't like is that our children are not getting what they need. I
Mhm.
dislike that more than I do not having friends and people being mad at me. And I hold everybody accountable in my life as I hope that they hold me accountable. That
Mhm.
has made me the person that I am today. And I thank God for the people who have held me accountable and who have pushed and are pushing me to my greatest potential. And I think it's a disservice when we as a community value friendship over life. And I said what I said, and it'll never change. I value children's lives more than I do going down to Minerva, having a drink with a friend.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. And thank you guys for just really jumping in. On Mondays we usually do 6 to 7. But to be on this panel, Sonya was invited. It was just an opportunity not to pass up because it was connected to what we already talk about. We already talk about dyslexia when we had Anna on. We already talk about the science of reading, which we have talked about a couple of times, and even had Miss Lucas Hall on. And so we got to continue to fight. I appreciate you guys jumping on, but I'll tell you, like it's getting back to the time where enough is enough. Like our city, our schools, our parents, our community, we're struggling, and I think we're at a place now, saying that everyone can agree we're struggling, but now we have to take it to the next level and say, we know we're struggling. We know our kids don't deserve it. What do we do? What do we do in order to make it better for the future generation? Like, what do we do to make it better for our kids, our grandkids, our neighbors? And it's going to take being educated and understanding, but it's also going to be like taking real action. Okay.
We said it. It's
Yeah.
taking action. It's
Yeah.
it's developing a moral compass. We're talking about people's lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
We live in a society where, you know, we've got to think about valuing people's lives. Um, and being inclusive. Let's talk about that word, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like all things inclusive is making sure I can read. All things inclusive is making sure that the school in my neighborhood is not a low performing school.
Right.
All things inclusive is making sure that educators are equipped with the skills they need to do what they love to do. All things inclusive is making sure that there's true, meaningful parent partnership. All things inclusive means not protecting systems and protecting children. All things inclusive mean I want a Louis Vuitton bag and red bottom shoes just like you do, and I deserve it too. So
Mm-hmm.
let's make sure that when I graduate, that I can go to college and I can buy me some. And I would like me a red sports car to go with this red lipstick. That is all things inclusive.
The American dream, the way you see it.
So they say. I ain't seen that shit yet. Excuse me.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Y'all know I cuss. I'm sorry.
yeah. I mean, it's been a nightmare, a concrete jungle, and it's the movie Groundhog Day with Bill Murray, where he would wake up and his nightmare was he would relive the day. And initially he was like, oh, like I can win the day. But then it just got old. Day after day, you're given the same thing and you have to finesse your way to have a good day. But overall, like you will never be great because you're only living one day. And for far too long, our kids, our community have only been given one dream, which is to for a few to barely make it out, for the many to be stuck in the nightmare. And that's not right.
That sounds like the high school I attended, Weiss Creek Comprehensive High School. Yes, Weiss Creek has produced some NBA players,
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
singers,
Doctors,
some lawyers, some doctors. But let's count them amongst the mass numbers of people who have gone through Weiss Creek. Let's look at the demographics when I was there. Let's look at, who really attended those schools.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go back. Let's go back to the 80s and the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
and let's unpack that a little bit. And let's follow that whole journey up until now. Let's do that. I am so open to doing that because we're so quick, like you said, John, to talk about the small percentages of success, which I do not want to take that away from anybody. But we're literally probably talking about 5% of people make it out of Weiss Creek on that level.
So there's a project, and first I see Latia Stewart jumped on cohort 5. We're at cohort 13. So each class we call them the cohort, and Miss Stewart experienced some things that made her have to take a break. And so to see you back on here, Miss Stewart, thank you. We love you. We're gonna keep this train moving, and thank you for the fight. But as you think about it and you talk about Weiss Creek signing, the 1619 project is something the New York Times did. And they did their research. They said, when did the first slaves come here? And what does it look like, in the new millennium, right? There was also a scholar who was an economist who did, what do reparations really look like and how much does it cost and why, right? Like doing the research. And so when you talk about not just highlighting the 1 or 2 out of a class of 300, but really looking at the whole 300 or more, what does that really look like in our community? Is it satisfactory, or do we deserve better?
Yeah, and then why are we so complacent? When I think about my daughter who graduated last year from Hunters Lane, she had gone through a journey of public school, traditional school, public charter, and private school. In her senior year, we had to pivot and go to traditional school. And mind you, she hadn't been in that school all 4 years.
Right.
And was the only student in the general education that graduated with honors outside of their baccalaureate program. How the hell does that happen?
Mm-hmm. We're gonna say that for Wednesday because that's loaded. That's
but ain't nobody saying nothing. We got a whole school board member that sealed or confirmed the graduates, and I cried. I'm like, y'all happy? I'm crying because ain't nobody here graduated with no honors. My daughter, who came from another school, was the only one in general ed that graduated from honors. And so it didn't happen at Hunters Lane.
Yeah. We're going somewhere, guys, and I see you, Miss Stewart, like still recovering. You're in it for the long haul. We're with you for the long haul.
Sweetie.
Yep. And that's our education journey to fight. Like it's not about 2020, 2021, 2022. It's making sure in the near future, and that's going to be the long haul. Like we see kids graduating, thriving, and being just ready for the world. Right now in Nashville at 80,000, you got to be living like we're not ready. We're not ready as a community and not ready as a city, and we got to make it better. If it's so much money being made in this city, we got to make sure our kids who are graduating have access to those same monies. Yeah. And that's reality. I think Sonya is a little froze, but thank you guys for jumping on. Like I seen some of you guys on the program before. I see some of you guys now. We'll be back for Access Denied. We're planning. We're working through some things. Again, thank you for chiming into our speaker series, and we will see you Wednesday. And then for next Monday in March, the last Monday in March, we'll see you soon. Thank you.